The courtroom was packed. Wooden benches creaked under the weight of reporters, lawyers, and curious onlookers. Everyone was buzzing about the morning's case, a lawsuit filed against a corrupt real estate tycoon. But no one was buzzing louder than Judge Hawkins. His booming voice cut through the room as his eyes fell on a boy barely 16, standing nervously in an oversized suit. "Son," Hawkins scoffed, leaning forward from his bench, "this is not a talent show. Where's your attorney? Did you think wearing your daddy's suit would make you one?" The crowd erupted in laughter. Some even shook their heads with pity. A teenager, in this courtroom, in this case. Absurd. The boy, however, didn't flinch. His name was Jordan Miles, and while the courtroom saw a child, inside his sharp mind lay knowledge beyond his years, knowledge he had carefully hidden until now. Jordan adjusted his tie, a fire sparking in his eyes. He let the laughter echo a moment longer, then calmly opened a thick file. His hands didn't tremble. Instead, his voice rang clear across the courtroom. "Your Honor, with all due respect, you might want to save your laughter. Because the evidence I'm about to present will silence this entire room." The crowd hushed instantly. Cameras clicked. The judge raised his brows, suddenly unsure if the boy was bluffing. Jordan looked straight at him, eyes burning with quiet confidence. "I may look young," he said, "but I've studied every law you've sworn to uphold. Today, you'll learn the danger of underestimating me." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. For the first time, the judge's smirk faltered. The boy wasn't just there to watch. He was about to change the trial itself. The judge leaned back in his chair, trying to hide his irritation. The boy's confidence unsettled him, though he wouldn't admit it. "Proceed, Mr. Miles," Hawkins muttered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see what magic tricks you've brought us." Jordan didn't waste a second. He placed the file on the podium and spread out photographs, contracts, and documents with meticulous precision. The papers slid across the wood like cards in the hands of a master dealer. "This," Jordan began, holding up a signed contract, "is the agreement Mr. Doyle, the defendant, used to illegally seize properties from over 20 families. The signatures here. Forged. Identical strokes, carbon copies." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. Judge Hawkins narrowed his eyes. "And how, pray tell, would you know that?" Jordan smirked, flipping the page to reveal a highlighted section. "Because I studied handwriting analysis. And this," he pulled out a second sheet, "is the defendant's actual signature. Completely different structure." The courtroom buzzed louder. Hawkins banged his gavel. "Order." But Jordan wasn't done. He pulled out an envelope, sealed with the logo of the defendant's law firm. "Inside this letter is proof the firm knew about the forgeries. They tried to cover it up with hush payments. Would you like me to read the amounts aloud, Your Honor?" The judge's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked less mocking and more uneasy. The defendant's lawyers scrambled, whispering frantically. Doyle himself shifted in his chair, sweat glistening on his forehead. Jordan raised his voice, letting his words pierce the silence. "You wanted a performance, Judge. Consider this my opening act." The boy wasn't bluffing, he was dismantling an empire, piece by piece. The once rowdy courtroom now hung on Jordan's every word. The laughter was gone, replaced by a tension so thick you could hear the scratch of every reporter's pen. Even Judge Hawkins, usually untouchable in his authority, shifted uneasily in his chair. "You're accusing a respected businessman and his legal team of fraud," Hawkins said, his voice sterner now. "That's a heavy charge. Do you even understand the gravity of what you're suggesting?" Jordan's gaze was unflinching. "I understand it better than anyone in this room. Because my family was one of the victims." Gasps shot through the gallery. Even the lawyers froze. Doyle's smug expression cracked like broken glass. Jordan continued, his voice steady but sharp as a blade. 3 years ago, Doyle's company forced us out of our home. They claimed we missed payments we never missed. My parents begged for a chance to prove it, but the documents had already been forged. I watched my little sister cry as strangers carried our furniture out. That's why I studied day and night. That's why I'm here. The boy's words sliced deeper than any lawyer's argument. The courtroom wasn't just hearing evidence, they were feeling his pain. Doyle's lawyer shot up, sputtering. Objection. This is emotional manipulation, he's just a child. Jordan turned to him calmly, almost pitying. If I'm just a child, then explain why your firm tried to settle this case quietly last year, after I sent them a letter outlining the same evidence I've shown here today. The lawyer froze. His face paled. Reporters snapped more photos, the sound like a drumbeat of truth. Judge Hawkins, for the first time, leaned forward, not to mock, but to listen. The boy wasn't just seeking justice. He was here for revenge. The tension in the courtroom thickened like a storm about to break. Judge Hawkins rubbed his temples, no longer mocking but deeply unsettled. Mr. Miles, he said slowly, if what you claim is true, you're exposing not just fraud, but a conspiracy at the highest level. Do you realize what that means? Jordan's lips curved into the faintest smile. I've realized it for a long time, Your Honor. That's why I didn't come here unprepared. He reached into his worn leather briefcase and pulled out a slim tablet. With a few taps, the projector screen flickered to life. Pages of emails filled the wall, conversations between Doyle and his lawyers, filled with plans to fabricate evidence, silence witnesses, and even bribe court officials. The room erupted into chaos. Reporters leapt to their feet, cameras flashing like lightning. Gasps and shouts filled the air until Hawkins slammed his gavel so hard the wood cracked. Order! Order, he roared. But nothing could contain the fire Jordan had unleashed. The defendant's face drained of all color. Doyle's lawyers scrambled, flipping through their files as if hoping the truth would somehow vanish. Jordan's voice rose above the noise, crisp and commanding. These emails were anonymously leaked to me 2 months ago. I verified them against official firm servers. Every timestamp matches. Every attachment aligns. And now, the entire court can see for themselves the empire of lies built by Mr. Doyle. The crowd's disbelief shifted into awe. A 16-year-old had cornered some of the most powerful men in the city, and was winning. Judge Hawkins stared at Jordan in stunned silence, realizing the boy wasn't just clever. He was dangerous. Doyle's empire was crumbling, but Jordan wasn't finished yet. The final blow was still to come. The courtroom had turned into a battlefield, and Jordan stood at its center, calm amidst the chaos. Judge Hawkins, once mocking, now leaned forward with eyes sharp, studying the boy who had just flipped his courtroom upside down. Mr. Miles, he said gravely, you've presented shocking evidence. But the defense deserves its chance. Do you have anything further before we proceed? Jordan didn't hesitate. He pulled out one last envelope, thicker, heavier. He walked across the room, his small frame dwarfed by the towering lawyers glaring at him. He laid the envelope directly on the judge's bench. Inside was a confession. Signed by a former employee of Doyle's firm, an accountant who had fled the city years ago, terrified of speaking out. In the letter, every forged transaction, every hush payment, every illegal seizure was documented in meticulous detail. The courtroom froze. Doyle's lawyers slumped back in defeat, their defense shattered. Doyle himself stood abruptly, his face red with rage. This is a sham. He's a child. This cannot be happening. But his voice cracked under the weight of evidence. Reporters swarmed, recording his downfall in real time. Jordan stood tall, his voice steady and commanding. You called me a child, Mr. Doyle. But today, the truth proved bigger than your empire. And justice doesn't care about age. Judge Hawkins raised his gavel. This time, it came down not in anger, but in finality. Based on the overwhelming evidence, this court will move to immediate indictment. Mr. Doyle, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. Doyle was dragged away in handcuffs, defeated. Jordan adjusted his oversized suit, his eyes glimmering with quiet triumph. For the first time, he allowed himself a smile. The courtroom came expecting a boy's mistake. What they witnessed instead was the rise of a legend.